Chapter 1. The I Am. 1.1. The Being Without a Face. When human language and conceptual frameworks were simpler, causation was naturally understood through the only model readily available: human agency. Events were caused because someone acted. Intent preceded outcome. Purpose implied a personal will. When people asked about the ultimate cause of existence, it was therefore natural to describe that cause in human terms, as a supreme being who thinks, decides, plans, and intervenes. This was not error so much as approximation. It was the best available language at the time. It is also possible that in the past, vast differences in technologies, knowledge, or even cognitive and perceptual capacities existed between human cultures. Many books and media speculate on such possibilities, sometimes attributing ancient discontinuities in knowledge to lost civilizations, extraterrestrial contact, or visitors from the future. While such ideas can be intriguing and, at times, provocative, they remain speculative and largely external in their orientation. They look outward for explanations, toward advanced beings, hidden technologies, or historical anomalies, rather than inward toward the nature of consciousness itself. This book does not rest its inquiry on such narratives. Instead, it turns to sources that point repeatedly toward something simpler, subtler, and more immediate: the direct exploration of awareness, being, and experience as they are known from within. When inquiry turns in this direction, away from speculation about external agents and toward the direct examination of experience itself, a remarkably consistent understanding begins to appear. Across cultures and eras, in traditions that emphasize contemplation, meditation, prayer, or disciplined attention, reality is not encountered as something governed by a distant, person-like cause acting upon the world. Instead, what is revealed is something far more fundamental: a presence or ground that gives rise to experience itself. This source of all things has been called by many names: God, the universe, the absolute. But in these traditions, it is not described as an actor within reality. It is understood as the condition that allows any reality, any awareness, and any form to arise at all. It is not a being among beings, but the state of beingness itself. Not an object of perception, but the full range of fields in which any perception can occur. Because the word God often carries layers of inherited imagery, personal mythology, and doctrinal expectation, I will refer to this source as the I Am. By this, I do not mean a deity with a biography, nor a cosmic ruler, judge, or planner. I Am points instead to the most fundamental source of awareness and being, the underlying reality that makes anything at all possible prior to the stories we tell about it. I use this term deliberately so that what follows can be approached not as a belief system to be adopted or defended, but as an invitation to explore experience directly, without the need to reconcile it with pre-existing assumptions or theological baggage. It may help to clarify what is meant by awareness in this context. Awareness here is not a mind thinking thoughts, nor a consciousness choosing outcomes. It is not an agent with preferences or intentions. It is the condition within which experience can occur at all. Just as space allows objects to appear without favoring one shape over another, or silence allows sound without choosing which note will be played, this fundamental awareness allows realities, possibilities, and even absences to arise without directing them. In this sense, the I Am includes not only what exists in form, but what could exist, what never comes to be, and what we ordinarily call nothingness. It is not an object within reality. It is the condition that makes reality, possibility, and even the concept of absence intelligible in the first place. Consciousness is not an observer standing apart from creation. It is not a supermind watching events unfold from outside the universe. It is the condition within which awareness and observing become possible at all. What we call individual awareness does not exist alongside the I Am as something separate. It is a localized expression within it. Source is not watching you from a distance. What we call personal awareness is consciousness participating from a particular locus. This distinction matters because many of the most persistent theological and philosophical confusions arise when we unconsciously turn the ultimate nature of reality into a superhuman personality. When we imagine God as a being who intends, approves, disapproves, or intervenes as we would, we inevitably ask why such a being allows suffering, injustice, or harm. These questions assume that the ultimate ground of reality operates as a moral agent within the same field of constraint that we do. But moral agency isn't absent. It simply belongs to a different layer of reality. Ethics, responsibility, intention, and care arise where awareness becomes localized, where it takes on perspective, limitation, and the capacity to choose among alternatives that affect others who are likewise constrained. The I am is not exempt from ethics. Rather, ethics is not applicable at that level. Ethics emerges later, where relationship, vulnerability, and consequence exist. This is why the allowance of freedom does not imply endorsement of harm. At the most fundamental level, the substrate of being itself, harm is not possible because there is no separate entity to be harmed. The substrate does not choose outcomes, suffer consequences, or take sides. It simply allows the conditions under which experience can arise. We can infer that harm is also meaningless at the soul level, because there is neither intent nor drive from which harm could arise. The soul, as we shall see, is already endowed with love and unity, reflecting the same qualities of the substrate, the I am, from which it arises. Harm becomes meaningful only at the level of incarnation, where individuated selves operate within constrained systems, bodies that can be injured, identities that can be wounded, relationships that can be broken. Even here, what can be damaged is never consciousness itself, but the temporary forms through which it is expressed. A body may be destroyed, awareness is not. Once freedom exists within such a system, misuse becomes possible. Removing freedom would indeed prevent certain forms of harm, but only by eliminating agency, growth, and moral meaning altogether. Responsibility does not exist at the level of the substrate, nor at the level of the soul as such. It arises within the incarnated self, precisely because limitation, choice, and consequence coexist there. Freedom does not negate responsibility. It is what makes responsibility real. Seen this way, the I am is not cold, indifferent, or mechanical, nor is it benevolent in the sentimental sense. It is prior. It does not act upon existence from outside. It is the field within which all existence occurs. Love, unity, and belonging are not imposed by it as commands, nor dispensed selectively. They are the natural qualities of this underlying reality when it is known directly rather than filtered through fear, separation, and identity. Many who encounter this level of awareness, through deep meditation, near-death experiences, out-of-body states, or spontaneous moments of dissolution, report an initial sense of vastness or darkness, sometimes even fear. But this fear does not arise because the state itself is hostile. It arises because the incarnated self's egoic identity, which we will discuss later, is loosening. What follows again and again across traditions and reports is not annihilation, but immersion, a felt sense of unconditional love, unity, and belonging so complete that fear dissolves on its own. You are not outside trying to get in. You are already inside, looking outward for what cannot be elsewhere. This is not a hidden feature of reality. It is a realization, one obscured only by habit and identification. Philosophers and mystics have used many names for this underlying reality: being itself, the Tao, Brahman, Ein Sof, the Godhead, or what some modern thinkers have called the ground of being. The names differ, but the recognition they point toward is strikingly consistent. With this framing, we can move forward without contradiction. We do not need to defend or accuse the ultimate nature of reality. we do not need to speculate beyond what can be known or lived. Instead, we can turn our attention to the next layer, the soul, where awareness takes on individuality without separation, and where choice, learning, and purpose begin to make sense. 1.2. The Light as Origin, Religious Echoes of the I Am. This understanding of the I Am as a timeless, all-inclusive ground of awareness is not a modern reinterpretation imposed on ancient teachings. It appears, often quietly, sometimes cryptically, within the very religious traditions that later became associated with more anthropomorphic images of God. In the non-canonical Gospel of Thomas, Yeshua offers one of the clearest expressions of this view. In Saying 50, he instructs his listeners, "If they say to you, 'Where have you come from?' say to them, 'We came from the light, the place where the light came into being on its own accord and established itself.'" Here, light is not presented as a created object or a moral symbol. It is self-arising. It does not come from elsewhere. It establishes itself. This language is strikingly consistent with the idea of a primordial substrate, awareness or being that does not depend on time, space, or prior causation. To say, "we came from the light," is not to describe a journey through space, but an emergence from the very condition that makes existence possible. This same intuition appears across traditions. The Upanishads speak of Brahman as that from which all beings arise, by which they live, and into which they return, not as a creator acting in time, but as being itself. In Kabbalah, Ein Sof is described as limitless light, prior to all form and differentiation, overflowing into manifestation without intention or preference. The Tao Te Ching begins by warning that the Tao cannot be named precisely because it precedes all distinctions, yet it is the source from which all things flow. What these teachings share is not doctrine, but recognition. They point toward an origin that is not a place, a person, or a decision, but a condition of existence itself, often symbolized as light, radiance, fullness, or flow, because those were the most accessible metaphors available. The language differs, but the insight converges. What we are emerges from a boundless field of being that is already complete. Seen this way, Thomas's saying is not theological instruction. It is remembrance. It does not ask us to believe that we came from the light. It invites us to recognize that we never truly left it. The where of our origin is not spatial, and the when is not temporal. It is a statement about essence, not history. This is why the I Am can be described as prior to time, space, and causation, without becoming abstract or remote. Religious language, when read at this depth, does not contradict the idea of a non-anthropomorphic substrate. It quietly affirms it. 1.3. Reframing the 5 O's as conditions of reality. Before we go further, it may help to name what we are doing with a concept that many readers will recognize from traditional theology. The 5 O's, omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, omnibenevolence, and oneness. In conventional religious language, these are often presented as attributes of a personal God, a supreme being who has power, knowledge, presence, and goodness, and who exists as a singular entity over and above creation. But that framing quietly imports a human model of agency, intention, preference, judgment, decision into the very place where, in this book's view, such concepts do not yet apply. Here, we will keep the 5 O's, but we will retranslate them. We will treat them not as traits of a cosmic person, but as conditions of existence itself, what reality looks like when it arises within and remains within the I Am. In other words, the 5 O's will be used as a map of the nature of the real, the way being behaves when it is not divided into inside and outside, here and there, self and other. This is not a new doctrine. It is a shift in emphasis from a divine biography to an ontological description. To make this less abstract, we will occasionally point to ancient sources that speak in precisely this direction, especially the Gospel of Thomas, which repeatedly describes the divine not as a distant ruler who occasionally intervenes, but as an ever-present reality, within you, around you, and discoverable through direct knowing. Thomas is not our only source, and we will not ask you to believe it. We will use it simply as an example of how long this perspective has been quietly held in the mystical stream of multiple traditions. With that framing in place, we can take these 5 qualities one at a time. 1.4. Omnipotence as unlimited capacity. In this book's framework, omnipotence does not mean the power to force particular outcomes, override freedom, or intervene like a ruler rearranging events. That image belongs to the human world of agency and control. Omnipotence, at the level of the I Am, is better understood as limitless capacity, the absence of any ultimate constraint on what can arise. It is not power over the world. It is the fact that reality itself is not held up by strain, effort, or scarcity. Being does not run out. The real does not need to conserve itself. The I Am does not manufacture existence the way a craftsman produces objects. Existence unfolds within it because it is the condition that allows any unfolding at all. When the Gospel of Thomas has Yeshua say, "Split a piece of wood, I am there, lift up the stone, and you will find me there," the point is not spectacle. It is not an intervention. It is the claim that the divine is not located somewhere else and then applied to the world. It is already the depth of the world. Omnipotence, in this sense, is not dramatic power. It is the inexhaustible isness that makes every appearance possible. 1.5. Omniscience as total inclusion. Omniscience is usually imagined as a mind that knows everything, past, present, and future, like a perfect database or an all-seeing surveillance. But again, that metaphor quietly projects a human-style knower, someone collecting information, onto the substrate that precedes such a someone. Here, omniscience is not best understood as information accumulation. It is total inclusion. Nothing can exist outside the field of awareness that makes existence possible. This does not require that every future be fixed. It does not require a script. It means only that nothing is ultimately outside the real, and therefore nothing is finally hidden from it. The Gospel of Thomas returns repeatedly to this theme, that the kingdom is not distant, not concealed by geography, and not accessible only to specialists. The kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. This is not merely a poetic statement about closeness. It implies that the divine is not unaware of any corner of existence, because nothing exists outside it. Omniscience, then, becomes less like God knows facts, and more like reality is transparent to itself, even when we are not. 1.6. Omnipresence as no outside. If omniscience is total inclusion, omnipresence is the spatial expression of the same truth. There is no outside to the I Am. Omnipresence does not mean the divine is distributed through space like a mist or a substance spread thin. It means something far more radical. Space itself arises within the divine. There is no location where the I Am is absent, because there is no location that exists independently of it. This understanding is not unique to spiritual traditions. Modern physics, approaching the question from an entirely different direction, has likewise concluded that space and time are not absolute features of reality, but properties of particular domains. Relativity treats space and time as relational rather than fixed. Quantum physics increasingly describes reality in terms of non-local fields and correlations that cannot be fully contained within classical spatial intuition. Many contemporary models even suggest that space-time itself may be emergent, arising under specific conditions rather than serving as the ultimate container of existence. While physics does not speak in the language of divinity, it arrives at a strikingly similar insight. Whatever is most fundamental cannot be bound by space or time. This is why so many mystical traditions speak in paradox. The divine is not found by traveling. It is found by seeing, not by going up to heaven or outward into the cosmos, but by realizing where you already stand. The Gospel of Thomas makes this explicit. The kingdom is both within and without. The sense of distance is not a feature of the divine. It is a feature of perception under the veil. This also helps explain a phenomenon reported again and again by those who enter deep states of union through meditation, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, or spontaneous dissolving of ordinary awareness. Many describe encountering an immense darkness or void. At first, this can feel unsettling, even frightening. But the darkness is not emptiness. It is darkness only because it is not sensory. It is not a place among places, not an object that can be seen or grasped. It is the prior field in which all places and all perceptions arise. What is encountered there is not absence, but presence without objects, not isolation, but belonging without boundaries. The fear that sometimes arises at first is not a response to the state itself, but to the dissolving of egoic identity, the loss of familiar reference points. When that fear softens, what remains is often described as overwhelming peace, love, and unity. The recognition that there was never anywhere else to go. In this sense, omnipresence does not mean that God is everywhere in the way an object might be everywhere. It means that everywhere exists within God. There is no outside, no edge, no place where the divine withdraws. What changes is not location, but awareness. And when awareness relaxes its grip on separation, the truth becomes self-evident. You were never outside, looking in. You were always inside, looking outward for what could never be elsewhere. 1.7 Omnibenevolence. From no outside to unconditional love. If there is no outside to the I am, then nothing can be excluded from reality's deepest ground. Nothing can fall beyond it. Nothing can be abandoned, rejected, or cast away from the whole. Omnipresence, properly understood, does not merely tell us where the divine is. It tells us how reality relates to itself. In a reality with no outside, separation is always provisional. Boundaries exist only at the level of form, perspective, and embodiment, not at the level of being itself. And where there is no ultimate separation, the fundamental relationship between all things cannot be hostility, indifference, or competition. It can only be inclusion. It can only be belonging. This is the deeper meaning of omnibenevolence. Divine love is not a preference for some over others, nor a reward bestowed upon the worthy. It is the natural condition of a reality that is internally unified. Love, in this sense, is not something the I am does. It is what reality is, when nothing is excluded. If there were an outside, love could be selective, care could be conditional, presence could be withdrawn. But in a reality where all things arise within the same field of being, exclusion becomes impossible at the deepest level. Even distortion, even forgetting, even acts born of fear occur within the whole, not apart from it. Omnibenevolence is simply omnipresence experienced relationally. This is why so many traditions insist that divine love is unconditional, not because suffering is denied or harm is excused, but because nothing ever falls outside the field of belonging. The I am does not love by intervening or protecting from all pain. It loves by never withdrawing the ground of being itself. Existence is never revoked. Presence is never rescinded. What we call judgment, punishment, or abandonment arise only where awareness is localized, where perspective narrows, memory fragments, and fear takes root under constraint. But at the level of the I am, there is no vantage point from which to condemn, because there is no other to stand apart from. There is only seeing, and seeing, without separation, is love. This is also why those who touch the deepest states of union often report the same realization: an overwhelming sense of being welcomed, accepted, and known without evaluation. Not because they have become perfect, but because they have momentarily relaxed the belief that they were ever outside to begin with. The love encountered there does not flatter the ego or excuse harm. It dissolves the illusion of exile. Omnibenevolence, then, is not sentimental kindness layered onto the universe. It is the emotional and relational expression of a deeper metaphysical truth: that reality is internally coherent, inclusive, and whole. Love is what unity feels like when it is recognized from within limitation. From this ground, ethics do not disappear. They sharpen. Because when nothing is ultimately outside the whole, harm done to another is not punished by an external authority. It is felt as incoherence within the system of relationship itself. Responsibility becomes real, not because God demands it, but because separation is only ever apparent, never actual. And so we arrive at the final insight toward which all of this has been pointing. If reality is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent in capacity, and omnibenevolent by nature, then the conclusion is unavoidable. There is only one, not sameness, but unity, not erasure, but belonging. That realization brings us naturally to the final of the 5 qualities: oneness. 1.8. Oneness as unity without erasure. Finally, oneness is not the elimination of difference. It is the recognition that difference does not equal separation. Oneness means that there are not 2 ultimate realities: one divine and one non-divine, one sacred and one profane, one inside God and one outside. There is only the one, appearing as many. Individual souls are not outside the divine, trying to get back in. They are expressions within it, unique perspectives arising within a unity that never breaks. This is why the deepest spiritual realizations do not feel like annihilation when they mature. They feel like coming home, not to sameness, but to belonging, not to disappearance, but to a more fundamental identity beneath the ego's roles. Thomas expresses this through its recurrent theme of integration, making the 2 one, not as a supernatural trick, but as the restoration of coherence. When inner division falls away, reality is experienced as it is, whole.